Namaste, group hug. Come and join me on the sofa. Today we have the delightful Jane Keir, who was previously managing partner at Kingsley Napley, a senior partner, I think it was instead, and is now partner. And you were head of family, or you
I
are head of
was head of
family now? I'm
family
not sure.
long ago.
You was head of
Yeah,
family. And I know that I looked on your biog and it said that you're one of only 4 women who's been manager of a top 100 UK law
that's
firm. So
right. Yeah.
a substantial power woman. So welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
So morning. So the whole vibe of this, Jane, is
But we all sort of fanned out and all left the office. But because we have good IT, good laptops, good support there, we do stay in touch. You know, we have sort of team meetings. So tonight we have 5 o'clock drinks for the family team. So we'll all be on Zoom, you know, with a glass of wine, sort of catching up on the week. And we speak, you know, in the mornings. So we make a real effort to stay in touch, stay connected, because it would be so easy just to sort of, you know, sort of stay at home and you know, you have to see people, you have to make a really big effort. But the office is empty. I had a colleague go back yesterday who said it was a bit like returning to the Planet of the Apes because it's dark and it's empty and it's quite spooky.
oh, how peculiar. Yeah.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
heard a lot of, we've done a few interviews like this, and we've heard a lot of very active Zoom and Microsoft Team meetings, which I think initially people were like, oh my God, you know, like we must do all this to survive.
yeah,
But now we're getting a little bit of fatigue with them. And I wonder a bit like sort of olden days and very corporate offices, you know, where it was like, oh no, everyone has to do this, everyone has to
yeah,
be in meetings
yeah,
all day
yeah.
long, whether it might go the other way where everyone's like, I actually can't bear being on a Zoom anymore, and I don't want to go to the 5 o'clock drinks, but I have to, you know, like I
If,
don't know
we,
whether it's crossed the line.
We've tried to sort of make it more, I suppose, more progressive in a way, because to begin with, you know, it was everybody on Zoom, and every Zoom can be a little bit, or your meetings can be a bit shouty because you're all trying to talk and you're not knowing who's going to, there's a bit of a delay sometimes. So we've mixed it up a bit. We had believe it or not, a murder mystery meeting with. This is the team again, and so there's 16 of us, and each you get allocated a character to play, and I just happened to be the murderer, right? But it was great fun because we all dressed up. You know, it was a bit different. It was a way of not just looking at a screen and going, hi, how was your day? When your day was probably pretty dull because, you know, you're at home, and much as you might love your home, it's still, you've got to work, you've got to be focusing on that screen. So we did this murder mystery, and it was great because it just, you know, made us all laugh, and it just brought us out of ourselves. And so you've just got to be thinking about ways, even on, you know, these platforms, to kind of mix it up, make it a bit more interesting. You know, people don't have to come, obviously they don't, but they quite like on a Friday to see, you know, what's the chat, what's been going on, you know, what new work have we got, what have, you know, who's been to court, because we're doing video hearings through court, which has been an experience.
I'm imagining, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a great catch up with the team. Much more difficult across the whole firm because it's so big. We couldn't do that, but we do talk at different, you know. So I'll talk to some of my colleagues, the partners. I'll talk to office services. You know, we're really trying to mix it up, and very conscious that we really need to stay close.
And so what about your location? You sent us a picture, is it of some foals or some horses in
Yeah,
the field?
yeah. Couldn't resist. Couldn't resist. So I actually live in North Oxfordshire. So about 10 years ago, I decided that I was going to make a break and I was going to join the great commuting race. So I came up here, bought some land. I'm absolutely nuts about horses. So I got some brood mares, and they produce foals between January and May each year. So I just happened to be at home when the foals started to arrive. And
Amazing.
I
How
mean, it's
cool.
incredibly lucky because it just
So
is so
sweet.
different to, yeah, the kind of the professional services. And so yeah, that actually, I mean, I can't show you at the moment, but that is pretty much my view, is looking out over these little rebels who've just arrived.
Little babies.
Yeah.
And do you need vets and things for that, or do they just pop
Oh
out and they're
no.
just
Well,
kind of on?
we usually they usually foal about 2 or 3 in the morning because they like to have sort of
Oh,
peace and quiet and solitude. And so the vets sort of come out the following day just to do a check that everything is, you know, all the levels in their plasma and their in their little bodies are fine, that the mare's okay. But touch wood, we rarely need them for the actual foal, the arrival of the foal itself.
Oh, that's really lovely. It's a nice story to hear, isn't it? When
Yeah,
everyone's been having a bit of sort of a weird kind of up and down time, I think, actually, with this
yeah,
whole lockdown,
yeah,
hasn't it?
yeah.
So, what do you on the news? We're going to move on to just talking about business generally now, and the sort of environment that we're all living through. And one of the things that's been quite odd is this sort of news every day of quite a lot of domestic abuse, which I'm imagining would end up connected to divorce or family,
Yeah,
wouldn't it? Because you've just
yeah,
got this
yeah.
aggressive situation, which I don't know how it plays out. But I've not, I mean, I'm looking, it's made me aware and like looking at couples in my local area and they all look happier. So I'm just trying to work out, is it real or is it the media? And you would be on the front line of knowing, wouldn't you, if this is a thing?
It's a bit of both. I mean, certainly, having to lock down together in what might be somewhere where you don't have a garden, you don't have outside space, and you've got children, so you've got to do the homeschooling, you've got to sort of keep everything going, you've got to be the responsible, sensible adult. It is a challenge in itself. And one of my Bradley wrote a brilliant blog about the challenges. I mean, she's a single mom with 10-year-old twins, and she wrote this fantastic blog about it's like you're in the middle of where she's going up because of all these different challenges that she's facing. So I don't underestimate for a second how difficult that is. And then add to the mix the fact that maybe you're not getting on terribly well with your partner and there are niggles and there are stresses. And, that can result in behavior that you might regret. It can result in violence and upset. And you can read any newspaper or go online and you'll see that the number of incidences of domestic disputes have gone up. So we have to be really vigilant, and we have a 24-hour day service, so if someone did get into trouble, then there would always be somebody in the department that they could speak to, and we'll then judge what we need to do in terms of do we need police assistance, or do we need to say just let this calm down and then let's see where we are, where we're in the light of day.
But have you seen a rise in that kind of to Kingsley Napley?
We've had quite a lot of inquiries about, what do I do if I'm feeling vulnerable? I'm finding it really hard to cope because, as you say, I've got the demands of my kids. I'm homeschooling. I'm, having to keep all this up straight. So seeing some of that, I've also seen some positives. I have seen both friends and clients saying, well, actually, being locked down together has given us the time to kind of reestablish our relationship, because most of the time, I'm traveling, he's traveling, the kids, we don't sort of talk to each other. And now we've had to kind of look each other in the eye and say, how are you? So I've had some positives too. It hasn't all been, like, oh, when can I get out? But it's so interesting because we do a number of prenups, and now the weddings are going back because you can't organize a big wedding because it just hasn't been possible. That's something else that we're encountering is, well, my wedding, which was set for June the 15th, that's had to go back. I don't know when it's going back to. But there's so many implications for us. Yeah, so it's I'll get sorry. No, I was just going to say that I'll get people phoning up and saying,
yes, you're gone.
So I just people phoning up and saying, can I have some advice now? But I'll be back later on because I'm just going to work out whether it's to my advantage or not to start right now. So we're seeing quite a few of those calls as well. When I'll be back, I'll be in touch.
So what are you advising people? I mean, there's something we spoke to with another family lawyer, was people losing their jobs and that causing difficulty with paying for their financial settlements, that kind of thing. So, I mean, you don't necessarily need to talk about that. Maybe it's not an issue, but I just wondered what are the issues that are coming to you, and what are people asking you about?
So one thing that I'm dealing with for a number of clients at the moment is, look, the court made a maintenance order. So in other words, an order that you pay your ex so much per month. and my employer, my firm, whoever it might be, has just said we're reducing everything by 25%, and you can't expect any of the payments out that you were expecting because we need to hold on to cash for the business. What do I do? Because I know my ex will be on the phone saying, "Where's my money?" And what we're actually seeing is quite a lot of, positioning, quite a lot of shouting, maybe at the beginning, but then people are actually being quite cautious and saying, okay, I accept that this is happening right across the board. So let's just wait and see if it picks up. I'm just going to sit it out. I'm not going to make any expensive trips to court. I'm just going to wait and see what happens.
Do you think so? So
Sorry.
you're saying people are being a bit more reasonable than perhaps they might have been before?
I think a bit more reasonable, or maybe not quite so brave as to say, well, if you don't do what I want, I'll just go to court. They're thinking, if I appear in front of a judge and the judge says, well, don't you know what's going on? Don't you accept that there's been a big drop in his or her income because we've all had to cut back? You're likely to get a pretty sharp response, which is don't waste my time. So I think it's better just to wait and see, don't do anything too hasty, but make sure that you get the most up-to-date bulletin. So as soon as he knows what his position is, you want to know of working days, because it wouldn't be great if you were kept in the dark for 2 weeks if things, maybe have got a little bit better and some money's come through. So I think it's about staying as up to date as you can, not being too hasty, not being too rash, but really just gauging it softly, because the hope is that we will, and it's way too soon to say, but the hope is that we will, come through and pick up.
In essence, what it seems like, doesn't it? It's like the middle of June, we might all spring back to maybe, I don't know, 60% from, I don't know what we would call now, but even this week we can meet 6 people or something like that now, can't we? And you think, if it does end up being kind of the middle of June, a lot of it resolves, it's actually been quite a short period for it to spring back, hasn't it? And in reality, perhaps not too much economic trouble. I mean, clearly a lot for certain industries like hospitality. If you owned a couple of restaurants, I mean, unless you've done a massive turnaround to delivery, it's pretty catastrophic, isn't it? But one could assume you could still be on track with a settlement scheme, couldn't you, depending on the industry? But if it doesn't return, then this could be another year. How does a person know if that person's got better or not?
If it's going to pick up. It's just so different. I mean, I remember, 2008, 2009, which was very much, it was the financial world, the banking world in turmoil and chaos and huge corrections with mortgage books and what have you. But we all got up and we all went to work and we all bought a Starbucks and we all, sort of went out in the evenings. We all bought, ate out, we all bought clothes, we all went to the cinema, all the rest of it. But this time that has stopped dead. And so we're not spending our money. The money isn't going into the economy. So this is, I think, different. And it's much harder to predict where we go with this one, because we don't know yet whether, I mean, heaven forbid there's a second spike, but, the medical experts still talk about it. How do these businesses get back from where they've been with with customers just dropping off because we haven't been able to go out. So I would always advise caution, and that if somebody really has suffered a very significant financial downturn, it is no good spending your money on trying to get that money out when it's just not there. So I think there'll be a lot of negotiating, a lot of, let's just steady this all off. And I know you've got an order that says you're entitled to, I don't know, 200,000 a year, but if the money isn't there, you can't have it. What I'm suggesting to quite a few clients is that actually you don't forego it, but you say, it's like a running tally that, if that money comes into you, then I get my share. If it doesn't come into you, or if you get some of it, then I get a proportion of it. So like the other end of the scale is don't give up on it. Just say, it hasn't come in because I appreciate that you have had a reduction, but I'm going to keep tabs on what I would have had if you'd had the whole lot. And then I'm going to work out what I should have when and if things, they will pick up. We just don't know whether it'll be this year, next year, 2 years. It depends where you are, what you do, if you own your business, if you're employed. There's just so many variables on this.
So, I mean, which sparked something in my memory, which I wanted to talk to you about, which is social media, isn't it? Which is always like a hot topic. But I mean, that's one way to keep tabs on people, isn't it? That there's been a few, we've had Shillings on here and Lansons and things like that, and talking about reputation, and Shillings particularly saying, don't post pictures having fun on TikTok, clearly in a hot tub. Like
don't post pictures at all.
Don't post pictures at all. You see, good advice from a top family lawyer. But people are clearly having a lot of fun, aren't they, on TikTok, doing all these lovely games and all these sorts of things in their house, which must be a bit grating, mustn't it, if you've got a settlement which someone suddenly says, oh, it's all a bit, put it on hold. So apart from putting it on hold, I mean, I can see that is going to be very tempting for people, isn't it, to record? Like, I mean, I don't want to put Victoria Beckham in the frame, but I think all celebrities have been a bit in the frame for their behaviour, haven't they? Putting things on social media, and actually their staff are, just not in good conditions, and it's in that sort of ballpark, isn't it?
You've just got to be so careful because, we look for, we get a phone call and we then go on to maybe Google or whatever it is, and we start looking to see what we can see and if it tallies with what we've been told. And then we look at, or we say to a new client, go and look at Facebook, go and look at whatever it is that they're on and bring me back. And you get the most telling comments on there, because sometimes, it might be late at night and people have had a few drinks and they kind of let rip about what they really think. And you can really pick up some stuff around that. And I know it's boring, but the advice has to be, if you're looking at, starting a case, or you're seeking advice, just do not pick up your phone, do not pick up your keyboard, your iPad, whatever it might be. Don't put photos on there. Don't comment. Because, we're all now so aware that this is the way that we're looking at people, that it's just not worth the risk. I mean, wait till it's done, wait till, you're in the clear. If you want to put, photos of something else up, fine, but it's all visible and it's hard to delete it. We'll often say, take a screenshot of that, take a screenshot of this, because, we want consistency. So when you go to court and you cross-examine, it's on, well, you said that, but here, look, this is what we found where you were. And, and it's not just family law. It's, some of the compensation cases where someone's saying, oh, I can't get out of bed. And there they are on the beach somewhere. You just have to be a little bit careful about it. And I know it's tempting, but try and resist it, at least for the duration of your case.
And it must be difficult, mustn't it? Because the phones have become so much a sort of normality in people's lives, haven't they? That I mean, people just post things without really any thought. In fact, they post their thoughts, don't they? So
they post video clips, that without thinking what's in the background. There's my new whatever. There's my new Ferrari in the background. Whoops, that wasn't quite such a good move, was it? Or there's my new, whatever it might be. So. It's that kind of, and especially at the moment, because, once we are coming out of lockdown, there's going to be a sense of, I want to sort of show you what I'm doing, and I look great, and here's this, and here's that, and here's the new boyfriend, girlfriend. And then, whoops, as I say, have a few drinks, and you just have to be mindful of the fact that, you are under review as whether you start the case or not, you are under review until we can get you a settlement.
Don't drink and post, I think is your message there, which is the message from Shillings.
That's a great message. Don't drink and don't post.
Too tempting. So let's move on. You made a post on LinkedIn which was about pensions and how do you separate those. And I know that we're not going to dig into the technical detail. The big theme a few years ago was trusts, wasn't it? That actually there's a lot of assets in trusts that. It became quite publicly known, people could be like, well, I've accepted this settlement and now we've just discovered, like 400 million sitting in a trust in the Cayman Islands or something. So that's kind of a known entity now. Is pensions the next wave of thinking about settlements?
I mean, pensions have obviously become much more open. They're much more flexible than they were even 10 years ago, when it was you put your money in your pension and you cannot get it out. And you probably only get it out in the form of an income when you're 65. Now the rules have been relaxed. It's part and parcel of encouraging people to build up their pension provision.
Yeah.
So pensions have become much more flexible animals. There are different types of pensions. Some of the old schemes are going. You have your self-invested personal pension scheme, which allows you a lot of leeway in terms of what you put in there and what you do and when you take it out. So they've become more transparent, shall we say, but they're still, because they've always been very much a tax-dominated, tax-dictated asset, it's still, I would say, relatively easy to see what's in there and how it's treated for tax purposes, because you only have so many allowances that you can use when you're doing your pension planning. So I suspect, I mean, trusts, you could set up a trust anywhere, you could transfer assets into it, you could have all kinds of sophisticated ways of making sure that there was little visibility on those assets. I think pensions are different because your pension assets you hand over to trustees and they manage them, and so there is accountability. So I mean, it's early days. There's very little case law around pensions because actually they're sort of like the neglected asset on divorce. Many women don't.
But they can be liquidated now easily, can't they?
Can
that's
be.
been the whole point.
Yeah.
Drawdown, isn't it?
That's part of the opening up of the pensions. But again, people are even so quite wary about it because you're going to be losing tax advantages that you built up over the years. So they're not quite the kind of portable, malleable asset that the regulation of trust has changed as well. But trust was seen as a way of getting that money off or never bringing that money onshore, having an offshore trust to deal with it. And then you've got the trustees saying, well, I can't tell you anything at all, even if you can find out who I really am.
What are you doing to give us some kind of real life stories
about what stories?
Or about what Kingsley Napley, so how that people can think, okay, that's what you do, and they can relate to it from the story.
We do a wide range of work from so the litigation, which we have a big criminal team, white collar criminal team, doing a lot of sort of frauds and cases with the Serious Fraud Office.
So what might one of those be?
You might be looking at fraud. You might be looking at fraud within a company, within an organization, international, organized crime and organized fraud. You might be looking at. It's interesting because I was reading something about this yesterday, and so we're talking about, as we come out of lockdown, how are we going to have criminal trials? Because you need a jury of 12 people. So you have 12 people socially distancing, and you have, these big legal teams who need to come in. So they're talking about, maybe holding these trials in like big sort of halls, big churches, that sort of idea. And then someone had suggested reduce the number of jurors from 12 to 7, which hasn't happened since the Second World War. And I mean, that was for me, I'm not a criminal lawyer, but that was a really interesting insight on, if we go back to 7-person jury trials, because we just can't accommodate 12 people socially distancing. It's, from an objective position, it's just fascinating that what we're going to have to do to ensure that we can all carry on, and that. Because one thing we do know is there's a big backlog of cases right across the board, from criminal to family to commercial. There was a backlog before. Sorry.
So you were saying, weren't you, that you've been doing some online courts,
online hearings?
Something.
Yeah,
online hearings. So tell us a bit about that then, because that's obviously having a massive impact on you and your work.
So we got we got guidance very quickly from our judges to say, okay, so this is happening, we're locking down, but your hearings can go online, if you like. You can use a platform such as Teams, Zoom, whatever, and we expect to see you at 10:30 a.m. on Monday morning, all ready for the hearing. And so, of course, there were teething problems initially, and we had one matter where we had a 30-minute appointment before the judge, and by the time his associate had dialed in everybody, 20 minutes had gone. Because it was getting used to the fact, who have I got on the line? Are you entitled to be here? Are you not entitled to be here? Will you promise me that everything you see and hear online is kept confidential? There was so much to do to get these up and running. Anyway, we kind of moved on a bit from there. And it's interesting because everybody's face is on screen at the same time. So you can see everybody. And whereas before I might be sitting across from my opponent, I can now see.
You get their reaction.
You do.
Yeah.
And I was talking to an American friend of mine, and because the Americans will shout objection a lot more. You see it on TV dramas. And she was saying the judge has this screen, like this gallery of Zoom people, and they all start shouting objection. And so he had real fun and games trying to control this kind of. So they now have this hand system where you put your hand up, and then and then you have the right to speak. But I think what's going to happen.
I've used that though, and lots of people ignore the hand signal, don't they? So I think even that's fraught with problems.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be the norm. So I think a lot of our work is what we call these directions hearings. So, we'll spend 30 minutes we have to go to court and do a, procedural check. And I think video hearings will be the norm for those. I can't see us having to go down to court for 30 minutes. I think our judges will say, I'll see you all on whichever platform I'm using. Yeah. And
so actually quite a massive change has happened because it had to.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And it's good because, it's going to have all kinds of repercussions in the longer term about, well, do I need to travel into London? Do I need to be in that office?
No, obviously not. Yeah.
And my IT skills have come on massively, let me tell you.
You can press on. So tell us one more story about your department. I mean, what you've so one
about
more story
the team.
Or something interesting that you've been doing.
We've had some nice invitations as a team, to go out and have drinks, and so from a rival, and so they said, oh, we'll see you all on Zoom Thursday at whatever time it was, and they said, what are you drinking? And we all thought, ha ha ha, funny. So we wrote back saying, oh, champagne, this, that, and the other, and they sent everybody a bottle by post before this drink started. So you did get a bottle of champagne. You did get a bottle
really
of
nice.
Yeah. And so you're there, it's Thursday night. And you're there with the bottle, showing them you've got the bottle. And then they'd organized rooms for us. So as I was saying, with a big Zoom screen, you're kind of competing a bit. Yeah. But they'd organized rooms. So you could go into room 3, room 2. At the end of it, the host ended it. And then his assistant, literally a minute later, sent us an email saying, right, the after party's in room 1. And it was great.
I love it. The Annabelle's party is in room 1. And so but we're going to come on to COVID in a minute and like what you're going to tell people past COVID. But one case that's in the news or hit the headlines for divorce or family that you've had thoughts about would be interesting to get your insight.
The compensation, which was a case that where we acted for the wife and we got her an award of £400,000. Only the second time it's actually been done. They're incredibly difficult cases because you have to have very specific facts that you have to meet. But this case finished in February, and we represented the wife throughout.
So what does that mean? So tell me a bit more. I see Mama Dummy, like so compensation for what?
So it stems from something called relationship generated disadvantage. So the fact is that, so let's say that you're a mother, you've got a fantastic career trajectory, same as that of your husband. But let's say you make a decision which is, okay, we'll have kids and I will step back from my career because we want one of us to be hands-on, bringing up the kids. We just don't want it to be some kind of, someone else is looking after them. So your career progresses and the husband's career is fantastically successful, earns a lot of money. The marriage breaks down. she's no longer going to benefit from the fact that his career is so successful because there'll be a divorce, and yet she's given up her career. So she says, I'm the one who suffered the disadvantage. I'm the one who effectively gave up my place on the career ladder. I want compensation to reflect that fact.
And that's, you can do that, and that's normal, is it? Or
No,
you're
it's not.
saying
It's
difficult?
far from normal. It's very, very unusual. The reason being that by most cases that you split the capital and income, and there isn't any money left to meet compensation. And you have to have this. The wife's career has to be as successful as the husband's, because otherwise, he says, well, you've already benefited from what I earned, done better than you would have done. Had you pursued a career that was less spectacular than pursuing. So, and judges don't, there's lots of arguing, lots of costs are expended. And as I say, you can get to a position whereby you've done all the hard work, there's no money there, and you're just leading your client up the garden path. So they are pretty rare. Yeah.
So why would you forge ahead with that? Because you believe there's either a real injustice, or because there is a lot more money somewhere that you think has not been attributed?
It would be because you feel that sense of, the buzzword for family law is fairness. There has to be this sense of fairness in the outcome, which is such an elusive thing. But if you have, let's say, a wife who has, and you can prove they had just as good a career as the husband, and yet, so he's now making loads of money, and he's going to go off and enjoy that because we'll be divorced, I won't get anything else. There is an unfairness around that. So it's to do with that. It's to do with compensating the loss rather than just saying, well, let's just see if we can find even more money. It's to do with compensating someone for that, disadvantage that they've suffered. But it is incredibly rare.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Because there's a lot of things. I talk to a lot of my girlfriends about that sort of economic empowerment and having your own money, which is obviously a problem, isn't it, in society? But actually, if you do make that decision, even if you had your own job, that's going to be the outcome, isn't it? If you give up everything and lose all your skills.
That's right. And then you're saying to the court, but I can't earn because I can't earn anything like the rate I used to. I've been outside the market for X years. The kids are fantastic, but I'm now disadvantaged and I can't get back to anything like where I was.
But it's still a rare phenomenon.
It is rare, and the emphasis now is so much on what we call the clean break. So, in other words, full settlement. You can't come back. Don't for a second diminish someone who is. There really are those issues. But I think the other thing we've seen increase is people going into mediation or alternative ways of resolving their differences. So saying, I want to sit down with a mediator and I want to work out, because I do not want, when we're so uncertain and, we haven't got any money, we haven't got as much money, I don't want to spend it all on new lawyers. So I'll go and find a mediator. I will try and find, a better way of sorting this out than rushing off to the court. So there's going to be an increase in that.
I was going to say, usually when people go through cycles of less money, which is very normal, isn't it, in these economic downturns, there is this idea that up with stuff, don't they? And they just stay together for ages because they need to be in the same house and they need to. They just need to survive on what they've got. So I just wonder, do you think people just go, I just can't stand it, or if it's a lull, or if it's just all rubbish?
I think we are, and people are being genuinely super cautious, as I think is absolutely right. But after that, I think there will be an upturn in numbers, simply because people can get moving again. They can see with a bit more clarity what the future might hold in terms of, well, actually, so for example, it's a very broad statement to make. It will suffer, I think, a massive correction in terms of both commercial property and residential property. But once people, see that it will stabilize and that it will, that it will correct itself, then that's when they'll say, well, actually, I feel more confident now that I know what I'm dealing with. I know what the approximate value my home or my office is, and therefore I feel like I've got more confidence moving forward. And I think once that starts to kick in, that's when we will get, it will become busier.
So, okay, with three bits of advice before we click off and let you get on with looking at your horses. So, as one of the best family lawyers in the UK, if not the world, I mean, if you were assessing on the situation now with job losses, lack of money, and difficulty at home, or the kids doing your head in, and you're not sure of school and all that kind of stuff. I mean, what's your outcome? What would so mediation and arbitration? You've already said is one system that people are latching onto, which sounds like a good check tick. That sounds like a reasonable thing to do, doesn't it? But what are your three things? What would you say to people?
What would I say? I suppose in a way, and I hope this doesn't sound a bit flippant, but we still haven't quite got no fault divorce. So if you get divorced on Monday, let's say you start you still have to say, my spouse has committed adultery, or my wife has behaved so badly that I can't live with them, or we've lived apart. Because we have been waiting and waiting for no fault divorce, which is on the statute. It's on the statute books, just about to be enacted, but we haven't quite got it yet. So in a way, maybe this wait will mean that people can then use no fault divorce and just say, look, for reasons I don't have to tell you about, my marriage has not worked out. Please, can I have a divorce? The answer will be, yes, you're entitled to go ahead. So I think that's one thing that will
easier.
Not so much easier, because more civilized, put it that way. And because the way we start at the moment, no matter how gentle you try and be, no matter how sort of, conciliating, if you're saying someone is at fault, you've got to say it. Otherwise, your judge will say, well, there's nothing here, is there? Reject. And then you've got a problem. So hopefully, I know the government has been incredibly busy with Brexit and COVID, and there isn't, and Parliament Parliament is sitting, but in a very much a reduced. But we really do need this piece of legislation to come into effect so that we can say, right, you don't have to go through this awful process of tearing each other to bits. And the other thing I would say is, in terms of, as I say, financial matters, I would say just quietly keep tabs on what's actually happening. So if you already have an arrangement, you already have an order, but you're not getting what you should get from it, just quietly keep tabs of what you think you're not getting. Because if things do come back, and I've heard that some properties are selling, and if, as I say, if things do come back, then you're entitled to say, well, that's what the order said, and although there's been a delay, I'm actually, here's my account, and I'm entitled now to receive this. So if it's non-confrontational, in a way that's just reassuring you that, there may still be a solution. Yeah, at the end of the day.
Okay, we've got no fault divorce. Keep tabs.
Yeah.
One more.
One more. Gosh, one more. I think do your homework.
Do your homework. Okay, go on. Say doing your homework.
Just do your homework in terms of take time to talk to a lawyer. Sort of don't necessarily go to the first person who pops up on the internet. We're very lawyers will speak to anybody, but just find one that you can actually talk to and that you have a bit of confidence in, because people do move around and there can be a mismatch in terms of expectations and that sort of thing. So talk to us.
We do. Yeah, good. And we do find, I live in Marylebone, so we do mix slightly with sort of a community that probably has a bit too much money, and therefore gets sort of word of mouth advice. And it's amazing how many people who go for divorce go for a hard divorce on the first sort of few months, and they can't take it, and then they just go for actually I have to change lawyer because I'm just going to go mad if I carry on like this. And then they end up with another one, and then they end up happier, or they could even end up with another one after that. But it's not an easy process, is it? I think
it's really difficult. If you're kind of running a company, or that's difficult in itself, but at least there's this kind of the space between you, your lawyer, because there's a company's in the middle. But if it's something like a divorce or an employment matter or a personal injury claim, it's you and the lawyer. And it's I hope that one of the things when we look back on this will be actually is what Caroline Flack said, in a world you can be anything, be kind. And hopefully we will see, when we look back on the awfulness of this, that there are real bright spots in amongst it where people were genuinely caring and kind.
That's a really good thought to end with. So thank you so much, Jane. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for